Thank you, Dalton. Last week we talked about drawing near to God. And it's one thing to draw near to God, but is that all we are commanded to do? Or do we have something else or is there more to this relationship other than just drawing near? Well, I think we can find part of our answer in Deuteronomy. So if you would, turn with me to Deuteronomy chapter 10. Deuteronomy chapter 10, we'll look at two verses here, verses 12 and 13. Now this is God himself speaking through Moses to the nation of Israel. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 12 and 13. And it says, "And now, O Israel, what does the Lord God ask of you? But to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to observe the Lord's commands and decrees that I am giving you today for your own good." God has laid out some things that he's asking of the nation of Israel. And I don't think that, we as Christians, we could say this is exactly the same things that God is asking of us. To fear the Lord your God. How much reverence is there for God today in the world that we live in? Not near enough. To fear, to revere, or to have honor for God. I mean, for so many that I see around us, they have an irreverence for God. A lot of times they'll say, when I get up to heaven, I'm going to, give God a piece of my mind. I'm going to have some words for him. And we know the truth is they won't be able to speak. If they understood that, we're told that we should fear the one who could destroy the soul. But yet he asks us to have reverence for him, to fear him, to walk in all his ways. It's one thing to come and listen, but it's another thing to do what God has asked us to do, to walk in all of his ways. We as Christians, as New Testament believers, we a lot of times find ourselves, God, what do you want me to do? What do you have for us, Lord? What is the path you would want me to take? And here he just says, walk in all of his ways. To love him and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. That harkens back to when, and we'll look at it here in a second, but when Jesus was asked the greatest command, his reply was to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. This harkens back to Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5, where that command was given. But then he also told the nation of Israel that they had to I lost my place here, hold a sec. And to observe the Lord's commands and decrees that I am giving you today for your own good. The nation of Israel, they had heard from God, from Mount Sinai, and what was their response to Moses? We don't want to hear anything more from God. You go talk to God, and then whatever he says to do, we'll do it. And God knew their hearts. At first there was the spoken law given from Mount Sinai. We were given the 10 Commandments. But then the nation of Israel basically disobeyed. They built the golden calf while Moses was up on the mountain, and they started worshiping idols. And God basically was ready to destroy them, and Moses intervened. So then he came back up. He says, come back up on the mountain this time and bring a couple stone tablets. This time you cut them out. First time God cut them out. He says, I want you to put a little sweat equity into this set so you'll take care of them a little bit better. Because when he came down the mountain and seen the Israelites dancing around the calf, what did he do? He broke the tablet. He broke all 10 commandments at once. He threw them down, and so God says, I want you to come up. I'm going to give them to you again. Only this time, he gave them the entire law. He says, okay, you say that you're going to obey everything I command you? Here you go. And he gave them the Mosaic law. And we know that they didn't walk in all of God's ways, did they? God knew that. He says, okay, you think you can do it on your own? You think you can come near to me by your own actions and your own deeds? Here's the law. So we see this is still, it's God's heart. He asks the nation of Israel these things. And it's no different with us. We can see God's heart here. He wants us to walk in his ways, to love him, to revere him. So, I would like to follow this with another story. You can find this one in 1 Samuel chapter 15. This will show you how well, this is a good commentary on how well the nation of Israel follows God's commands. Now, the nation of Israel, they've come into the promised land. They basically have had time now. They've settled in, and they looked all around them. And they seen the neighboring countries all had a king. And they said, we want to be like them. We want a king. And God had told Samuel, not to worry. They hadn't rejected Samuel. They had rejected the Lord. And that's the comforting words that God had given Samuel. He says, they haven't rejected you. They rejected me. But go ahead, give them what they asked for. And so Samuel looked around, and he was drawn towards, or given Saul to anoint as king. And he looked like a king. He was head and shoulders above everybody else in stature, in appearance. When people looked, they went, hey, that's the king. We can see him right away. And just because he looked the part, though, he wasn't a man after God's own heart, as we find out. And that's where we're going to start, kind of pick up the story. This is 1 Samuel chapter 15. We'll start out at verse 1. And it says, Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over his people Israel. So listen now to the message of the Lord. This is what the Lord Almighty says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them as they came up from Egypt. Now go, attack the Amalekites and totally destroy everything that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put to death men and women, children and infants, cattle and sheep, camels and donkeys. So Saul summoned the men and mustered them at Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men from Judah. Saul went to the city of Amalek and set an ambush in the ravine. Then he said to the Kenites, go away, leave the Amalekites, so that I will not destroy you along with them. For you shown kindness to all the Israelites when they came up out of Egypt. So the Kenites moved away from the Amalekites. Then Saul attacked the Amalekites all the way from Havilah to Shur, to the east of Egypt. He took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive, and all his people he totally destroyed with the sword. But Saul and the army... Let me stop there. Anytime you hear a but, when it has to do with obeying God, that's not a good thing, is it? It sounds like he was doing really good here, but it says, but Saul and the army spared Agag and the best of the sheep and cattle, the fat calves and lambs, everything that was good. These they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak, they totally destroyed. Saul has been given a task to do. God has asked him to go and destroy the Amalekites. These were the people that came up and attacked the Israelites as they came out of Egypt. And you remember the story of the defeat of the Amalekites. It's when Moses was there and he had his arms raised up. And as long as his arms were raised up, they were getting the victory. But then if he let his arms down, the Amalekites would start to get the victory. And so, and I forgot the names. What's that?
Joshua and Hur.
Yes. They would keep his arms raised. And as long as his arms were raised, then they got the victory. Okay, but they weren't totally destroyed that day. But now they've come back, and now God has given Saul a task. I want you to go wipe them out totally. And later on we find out, you remember the story of Esther and Haman? Haman was a descendant of the Amalekites. And it was because of Saul's disobedience that they weren't totally wiped out that day. But here, we see the nation of Israel and Saul, they're unwilling to do what God has commanded. They just half-heartedly did it. All the things that were despised or the things that were weak, they totally destroyed. Yeah, we don't want those problems, right? We don't want their sheep interbreeding with our sheep. We don't want those weak things. We want the best of the best. And we're going to keep it for ourselves. What is partial obedience called? Disobedience. It's called disobedience, isn't it? So Saul disobeyed God. Now, he's going to later on go and try and blame the soldiers. They made me do it. Kind of harkens back to the Garden of Eden. Remember Adam? When God says, what have you done? Oh, that woman. The woman that you gave us. I mean, Lord, before this, it was just you and me. Things were great. Then you stole that rib from me and made the woman, and it just went downhill from there. She made me eat the apple. Or the forbidden fruit, not the apple. That's one of those rumors that were started years ago. Yeah, we're not sure what it was. And then the woman, what did she say? What did Eve say? It was the serpent. He made me do it. It harkens back to that. So let's continue reading. It's at verse 10. It says, the word of the Lord came to Samuel. I am grieved that I have made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. Samuel was troubled, and he cried out to the Lord all that night. We see a problem here, don't we? That he has not carried out my instructions. Is that important to God? It is. To obey. Jesus says in John chapter 14, if you love me, you'll obey my commands. This is important to God. So it should be important to us to follow everything that he says. Verse 12, it says, early in the morning, Samuel got up and went to meet Saul. But he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor and has turned and gone down to Gilgal. There's a problem. He's trying to take all the glory, right? He's not obeying God, and he's got pride going on in his life. He built a monument to himself. When Saul reached him, Saul said, when Samuel reached him, Saul said, the Lord bless you. I have carried out the Lord's instructions. But Samuel said, what then is this bleating of sheep in my ears? What is this lowing of cattle that I hear? Saul answered, the soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God, but we totally destroyed the rest. Stop, Samuel said to Saul. Let me tell you what the Lord said to me last night. Tell me, Saul replied. Samuel said, although you were once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribes of Israel? The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and he sent you on a mission saying, go and completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Make war on them until you have wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the eyes of the Lord? Now, they seen the best of the plunder, right? And word, they said, well, yeah, we're going to bring it back and sacrifice it to the Lord. Again, partial obedience is total disobedience. And God calls it exactly what it is. It's evil in the eyes of the Lord. You know, Saul came back and said, I did exactly what the Lord told me to do. But he hadn't, had he? Now, we don't know if Saul was feeling guilty at the moment and just trying to cover it up with a lie. Or maybe he felt like he had done exactly what the Lord had told him to do. He had gone out and got the victory, didn't he? All that was left was the plunder and the king, Agag. But it was still disobedience. He hadn't fulfilled the command of the Lord. Verse 20 says, but I did obey the Lord, Saul said. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag, their king. The soldiers took sheep and cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord, your God, at Gilgal. Notice, he's not even claiming God. I'm bringing him back to sacrifice to your God. So that's the problem in the world right now, is they haven't decided which God they're going to serve. You know, we raise our children, and they come to church and they worship with us, but it's not until God becomes their God that the transformation truly happens in their lives. Saul, was the Lord really his God, or was he just Samuel's God? Was he just going along for the ride? And notice he said he took the plunder from the sheep and the cattle, the best which was devoted to God. It was already God's, and he's going to come back and bring it and sacrifice. Remember David? When he was encouraged to do the same thing, they had won the victory, and they said, why don't you sacrifice the best of the plunder to God? And David replied, I will not sacrifice that which cost me nothing, because it had no value to him. See, that's what God looks at. It's not the sacrifice itself, it's the heart that goes with it. The willingness to give up something for God. But Samuel replied, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as in obeying the voice of the Lord? To obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. It's interesting. You look at that word obey there. And it's interesting that they would translate that word to say obey, but it actually means to hear. You know, to obey, it starts out with hearing first, and then obeying. We looked at that a couple of weeks ago. Be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own self. See, God delights in the fact that we would obey him. To obey is better than sacrifice. God is the one that set up the sacrificial system, but it looked at the offerer's heart. See, when they brought a sin sacrifice, it was agreed that the person bringing the sacrifice was a sinner. The offering was the one that was examined to make sure it was without blemish. So the sacrifice had to mean something. Without blemish means it had value, right? It was like your prized sheep or your prized cow. You know, that 4-H animal you're going to go down and make thousands off of. You offer it to the Lord. But for Saul and for the people, it had no meaning. And here, through Samuel, God says to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. That word to heed, the way the definition of it is to incline the ears towards or to attend to. And it goes back to hearing and doing. That is more pleasing to God than all the sacrifices. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. God calls it exactly what it is here. He calls it rebellion. To not do what God tells us to do is rebellion. And arrogance. Did Saul think he was going to get away with it? Isn't that like the human nature? I've got a secret. God won't know. I don't know about you, but that's never worked out good for me. And it definitely hasn't worked out for Saul. And he says, arrogance is like the evil of idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has rejected you as king. What happens to us when we reject the word of the Lord? See, there's a lot of people that have made that choice. We know that it comes down to a decision. Do we choose God? Do we believe his word, or do we reject it? And that's the difference between heaven and hell. But now in our Christian lives, what happens when we reject the word of God? It's called disobedience, isn't it? Sin.
That separates you from God.
It does. It separates you from God. You know, God doesn't reject us as his children, but it separates us. It insulates us from the presence of God. It causes that fellowship to be broken. But has God called us to go out and wipe out the Amalekites? No. Kind of goes back to, let me ask you, now the difference between Saul and us. He'd asked Saul, through his command in Deuteronomy to fear the Lord his God. He called the Lord, your God to Samuel. He didn't even have that reverence of God of being who he is. He says, oh, he's your God. Did he walk in all of his ways? No. How about us? Do we walk in all of his ways? To love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul? So, you could say no on Saul's part, right? He isn't loving on God, because if you love him, you're going to obey him. That's what Jesus has told us. If you love me, you will obey my commands. And we love him because he first loved us. That's the part that should blow our minds, should make us want to do these things. And to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. What does serving God look like? Well, let's look at that a little bit. We know that he has given us some commands, right? In Matthew chapter 22, verses 34 through 40, Jesus answers the question that is posed to him. In verse 34 of Matthew 22, it says, hearing that Jesus has silenced the Sadducees, the Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question. Teacher, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second one is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Have those commandments been abolished? No. No, if you look at the Old Testament and the Mosaic Law and everything, it was supposed to be loving God and loving your neighbor. You look at the Ten Commandments and that's exactly what it is. Loving God with all your heart. If you're loving God with all your heart, you're not having other gods beside Him or before Him. You're not making graven images. You're not using His name in vain. You're meeting with God as we've been appointed to do. And if you're loving your neighbor, you're not trying to kill him or take his stuff. So we have some commandments, don't we? Are we doing them? You know, sometimes it's like, you know, in the Christian life, we would love to hear, I want you to go out and wipe out the enemy. Oh, I'm in the Lord's army. Here I go. I got all my armor on. I got my sword. I'm going out and I'm going to hack the enemy to pieces. But that's not what He's called us to do. To love the Lord your God. And to love your neighbor. Sometimes it's hard to love a neighbor, isn't it? You know, I don't know about you, but over the years we've had some really good neighbors. I have some really good neighbors. I've also had some that are trying. Yeah, I'm sure you've all experienced that. And the trying ones, it's kind of hard to love on them, isn't it? But how else are they going to see the love of God unless we show that love to them? You know, when somebody comes to you and say your dog barks too loud, or whatever the case may be, you know, and they're up in your face, it's hard not to do the same right back to them. But God says to love your neighbor as yourself. What else have we been commanded to do? See, that's the thing, is the church, you know, we're really good at coming to church and to listening, but are we hearing? You know, just like Saul, you know, to obey is better than sacrifice. Are we listening? But are we doing? That's the other question. One more passage. And these are not all the commands, but I think there are three that are very, very important that we as the church should focus on. The last passage we have is found in Acts chapter 1. If you'll turn there with me. Acts chapter 1. Let's look at verses 6 through 8. It says, so when they met together, now this is Jesus speaking to His disciples, they asked Him, Lord, are you at this time going to restore the kingdom of Israel? He said to them, it is not for you to know the times or dates the Father has set by His own authority. A whole bunch of the church right now is all wrapped up in trying to predict when Jesus is coming back. When He's going to rapture the church out. Jesus just said it's not up to us. It's not for us to know. We can see the season. I don't know about you, but I look outside and I say, yep, it looks like the season. But does that mean He's coming back in 10 minutes? 10 years? 100 years? I don't know. We're told, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the coming of the Son of Man. I'm not sure how wicked the world was at the time of Noah. It was pretty wicked. There was only one righteous man found, and his name was Noah. There's not a lot of righteousness going on outside the world that we see right now. But he does say this, "But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit comes on you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in all Judea and Samaria, and to the ends of the earth." God has called us, not just his disciples, but he's called us to be his witnesses. You look up that word witness, and it can be an eyewitness, or it can also be an ear witness, is the way the definition rolls out. We've heard something, haven't we? The Word of God. How God himself, through the writers, have declared that we too can be found righteous in God's sight. That we can have our sin debt paid in full. How we can be justified by Jesus Christ and what he did for us on the cross. So he's called us to be witnesses. Where can you be a witness at? Anywhere. Even in the Lost River Valley, where he put us. See, that's what God wants of us. You look at the disciples, and they had a specific task at hand. The apostles, they were the sent ones. They were to go out and proclaim the good news. But you and I have been given this commission too, to be his witnesses. Right here. And the account that we have in Matthew, in the Great Commission, it says there that he says, "Therefore go and make disciples of all nations." The way that it's laid out in the Greek, it's "as you are going, make disciples of all nations." That's our command. Are we going to be like Saul and be partially obedient? Well, Lord, I'll make disciples for whoever comes to church. That's partial obedience. Just be his witnesses. See, the nice thing about being a witness is you get to basically give your account of what happened. Jesus saved me. I'll butcher it, but I think it's Joe Focht that puts that, there's only one real testimony. I was a jerk going to hell, and Jesus saved me. All the rest of it's details. Go out and tell people what Jesus has done for you. What God has done for you by sending his only begotten Son to die in your place. See, that's what we're commanded to do. He has given us this task. He hasn't told us to go out and wipe out the Amalekites. He's told us to be his witnesses. I think we got it easy compared to what the nation had to go through when they were coming into the promised land. See, for you and I, the enemy has already been defeated. And we get to tell the world about that. It's the good news, the gospel of Jesus Christ. Death has no hold on you and me anymore. Oh yeah, physical death, unless the Lord comes back soon, we'll all experience that. But spiritual death, that eternal death, has no power over us. And we get to go out and tell the world about that. To be his witnesses. He asks us to fear the Lord your God, to revere him, to walk in all of his ways, to love him with all your heart and your soul, and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Those are our marching orders. They're not impossible tasks that he has given us. He asks us to do these things. Why? He loves us. And just like he told the nation of Israel, it's for your own good. Isn't it? So, let's be about obeying God and be his witnesses where he's put us. Obedience is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of many, many lambs. Our Heavenly Father, Lord, I thank you for all that you've done for us, Lord. I thank you for your Son and for the sacrifice that he made for us. The ultimate sacrifice, Lord. And I ask, Lord, that you will help us to move upon us by your Spirit to be your witnesses, Lord. Lord, empower us to just take our stand where you've placed us and to not back down, Lord, to be steadfast and immovable and to glorify your name. Lord, I thank you for my brothers and sisters that are here today, and for those that are not with us, Lord, I pray that you'll move upon them also, Lord. I pray, Lord, that you'll tug at their hearts and stir them to want to join back with us, Lord, in fellowship and in worship of you, Lord, for you are worthy of all praise and honor. Lord, we love you and we ask for your blessings and for your guidance in all that we do. In your Son's name, in Jesus' name, amen.